Oh man, after a few weeks of bouncing between intros, I think I finally decided I'm just going to stick with that one. That's a good one. Just a nice little one. Hey everyone, welcome to episode of 7 of Culture and Decay here on the Swampcast Network. Let's turn down that background music a little bit. Welcome to episode 7. Yeah, I didn't really have a guest lined up for this week. Next week I got Top Lobster, so if you're wanting to enjoy that one, you can wait until next week. But this week, I don't know. I just kind of felt like exploring the past a bit in the world of Liberty. Um, Ghost of Liberty's past, I guess you could say. But in a way, this is, I named this journey to the. Turn off this fucking music. Jesus Christ. The music was fine before we went live, and then all of a sudden it just got like super annoying. I don't know why. But yeah, so basically, I named this episode Journey to the Mises Caucus because overall it's just going to be about the journey to the Mises Caucus and how I ended up there. Got the pin on there. But yeah, so as far as it goes, I'm sure this begins where many it do, which is, the Ron Paul revolution of 2011 and 2012. And, I want to talk more about the things that happened more than anything personal. So let's try and focus on that because, the Ron Paul revolution really was a monumental thing. Like it really, I still cannot think of, maybe it was because I was a part of it and I was in the middle of it, but I still can't think of anything that came close. The problem with Bernie is like, as much as I want to say he's the leftist version of Ron never endorsed John McCain. He never endorsed Mitt Romney. And, Ron generally was pretty based in principle every chance he got. Even when he voted for, retaliation for 9/11, the invasions of Afghanistan, I got to give Ron credit. He was at least he stuck to his principles. He stuck to his guns. But I can understand why in the heat of the moment he might have done that. But that's the one thing. But man, when Ron was running for president, it was, talk about a different time. Like the internet was just starting to catch on more as something with everyday folks. And I was one of those people who kind of got hooked into the internet in 2011. Didn't really have anything before. Family just never had that sort of shit. And my God, just thinking of the internet back then, there was a time when libertarians run roughshod over the internet. Like, not, I really wish there was a way to go. I wonder if Internet Time Machine or one of these archive sites would be able to pull some of this old stuff up. But like, there was a time where you could go to the most random of videos on YouTube, scroll down and see Ron Paul for president, Ron Paul 2012, Ron Paul 2008, whatever. Like shit, I remember the rapper Kid Cudi under the song "Save My Soul" from his mixtape Kid Named Cudi. The number one comment for a long time was Ron Paul for president, Kid Cudi for vice president. Like little shit like that. Like we just like ruled the internet. And then it was like after 2012, people really didn't know what to do, where to go, where to, some went right back to the Republican Party, but after seeing the way they treated Ron and the way we were treated, because let's not forget, like for those who aren't aware, just how badly the Republican Party screwed Ron Paul out of that nomination. They censored delegates. They didn't seat the entire delegation from Maine. They kept buses of delegates outside of the convention. That way they would miss certain key votes. Like there was a lot of shady shit that happened that they did to really prevent Ron from getting that nomination. And it was really just awakening to a lot of people. And after 2012, not many people knew what to do. Around the same time, the 2011-2012 timeframe, there was a small like fringe niche group that grew up online called the Common Ground Movement. It was just a collective of left-wing, right-wing, ANCAPs, ANCOMs, kind of those kind of people. And it was really a clusterfuck. And looking back, I can see why it ended up failing. Mish came to educate. Damn right I did. Thank you, Shannon. But the whole Common Ground movement thing was interesting. And if you go look up the websites or the YouTube page Storm Clouds Gathering, all their old videos are still there, as well as some more recent stuff. But I don't know who's running it now, but they're they're still trying to put stuff out there, but nothing has really matched up to the things that they were putting out back in 2011, 2012. Like they put out some pretty damning stuff about Obama, the road to World War III, like, and a lot of these people were very left wing. Like these guys were going after Obama when the left was, you know, in power, for lack of a better word. And it was an interesting time. You know, it was almost like this delusional idea that like, oh, the left and the right are going to come together and unify or whatever. But I to some degree, I think that idea is delusional after this whole thing transpired. One thing that came out of the Common Ground movement, there was like a publication, a news publication, a website based out of I think it was Pontiac, Michigan, and I was someone who was brought on to be a writer there. And I kind of learned firsthand that, you never let a communist run business. There was a Ron Paul guy was in charge when that place was successful. Then the communists took charge and told everyone the only way you're going to make money on here is if you write here constantly. And people like me, that was just a side gig. It wasn't a full-time thing. So everyone stopped writing. And, you took away the profit incentive. Isn't everyone writing? We're doing everything, all the work. It's like, yeah, you're doing all the work because you're taking the profits of all of our labor. Sorry, a little side thing there, but that whole thing was just a clusterfuck. It was a failure waiting to happen. Eventually that whole thing ended up collapsing in on itself. I still don't know what happened. I'm not up there in Michigan. No one ever gave me a straight answer. I can only assume it had to do with the communist girl that they put in charge after the Ron Paul guy left, who was running the website. But the Common Ground movement itself kind of expanded. It existed beyond that for a while there. I think their greatest, if anyone from the Common Ground movement is still out there and remembers those days, I think that the best victory they had was the anti-Syrian war protests of 2013. A lot of the Common Ground organizers that I had known were key players in all of that. And I really think that this is one of those times where the peaceful protests came out and Obama saw those like, we can't, we gotta go more covert. We can't be blunt about this. And, I got to give them props. I think that's really where they shined and where their big victory was at. But eventually the thing broke apart as things like that do. It was very sad to kind of see happen. Many of the right-wing people who were with the Common Ground movement generally gravitated towards Trump, while the other people gravitated the other way. Some became ultra-authoritarian. One dude was a straight-up fucking tanky, so I'm not surprised to see that he's willing to use the state to go after folks like me and my buddies here at the Swamp Creatures, But the Common Ground movement really was something interesting that kind of existed in tandem with the Ron Paul movement as like a little smaller side attraction, I guess you could say. Because a lot of those Common Ground people, even if they were left wing, they ended up becoming delegates for Ron Paul at the GOP convention in Orlando, or was it Tampa? Fuck if I remember. I think it was Tampa in 2012, if I'm not mistaken, or was it St. Pete? I don't know. It was somewhere in the Central Florida area, but. Yeah, the whole thing between Ron, the Common Ground movement, and all that, it's like after those things happened, it's almost like people didn't know where to go or what to do. The Common Ground movement just kind of crumbled to infighting between things like Black Lives Matter and all that, and Trump and all sorts of other shit. But the Ron Paul revolution was kind of set adrift, and you saw organizations like Young Americans for Liberty come out of that. I worked with them for quite a while, and they're, despite all the shit that we heard about last year, like I will say there was a time that, I was quite proud of working for that organization, at least here in the state. Like, shout out to Brittany Turner, the girl who ran Young Americans for Liberty in the state of Florida and the UCF chapter. Like, I want to say it was around 2013, like to 2015, something like that. Like, she did a damn good job, Yale today is it's a whole different beast. It's more young Republican, it feels like. Well, back in those days, they actually did have libertarians, like former libertarian candidates from like the 1980s coming in and, doing speaking engagements at Young Americans for Liberty events. Like, kind of look at the Libertarian Party. I'm like, what the fuck happened to that? This seems like the type of place you would want to, like, send someone like Spike Cohen to do a speech if possible. Like, a lot of those organizers, they like Spike, so it's not like it's wishful thinking. Like, that door probably is open to some degree. Spike's just an example, but at Young Americans for Liberty Revolution, totally different crowd than the one that I was used to from my heydays of when I was in college. And the only, there was Kennedy was just having the audience yell things out to her, and I yelled out, "Dave Smith for president." There was a good amount of applause that came from that. So we aren't like a radical fringe within groups like that. But I don't know, maybe it's just the current state of the LNC, but that's definitely something that needs to change. But yeah, that's kind of how things ended up going with that. And working for Young Americans for Liberty is interesting, but it opens doors with a lot of these other institutes. There's FEE, Future Freedom Foundation. That's the great Jacob Hornberger's place. And, there's all these different places. I probably could have gone to quite a few of them, but instead I decided to take a risk and signed up for a little hole in the wall place that was being ran by a French immigrant, Frenchman, who moved here to the U.S. And I don't even know if technically he was an immigrant, but fuck it. It was like a renegade shit. Might as well bet on like the weird horse. You know what I mean? See what comes out of it. See where this path lies. I could go to Americans for Prosperity, but be like every other like kid who goes works for the Republicans. But that was interesting because that kind of opened up a world that I had never really known up in the New Hampshire, where me and some of the fellow swamp creatures are planning on going to Pork Fest next year and or this year, and kind of opened up an entire world that I'd kind of seen little glimpses of during the Ron Paul days, but never actually went and took a part in. Didn't go to Pork Fest, but I guess I went to like the summit that the Institute had held right after Pork Fest. If I had went there a week prior, I would have been at Pork Fest. Never been to Pork Fest. So this year at Pork Fest, Swamp Creatures are going to be there. We're going to have story time by the campfire. So that's going to be fun. Come and join us. But, the whole thing with kind of seeing that world, it was a very different thing. Like people like Joe Quirk from the Seasteading Institute and the guy who was the original founder of the Free State Project. I forget what his name is, but I don't think he has much to do with it anymore. But, just kind of seeing how that all was. It was a very enlightening sort of thing. It's kind of sad things didn't last with that institute. I don't know, whatever came of it. Eventually someone threw me under the bus for some shit there, but it is what it is. I kind of just said fuck it to the Liberty scene after that. And if it wasn't for some buddies dragging me to Tom Woods 1000, fuck if I know where that story would have ended, It was through there, discovered the Mises Caucus, and the rest is history really after that. I volunteered for Jacob Hornberger, then got kind of more acclimated and eventually took the state organizer role here in Florida. Kind of all went from there. But, the caucus, I got to say, out of all the organizations that I just mentioned, like the small start, the International Coalition for Human Action, I think that was the name of the small one ran by the Frenchman. The Frenchman who had some very fascistic views, and I don't use that word lightly. Like we talk about the communist running the newspaper or the website, we talk about the fascist running the other one, and I don't mean that lightly. I mean, he actually kind of he was like he kind of tested ideas of anarcho-fascism and shit with me. Like I was just kind of like, nah, man, I ain't feeling this. It ain't what I'm into. It ain't what my soul is telling me is real, so to speak. But it was. I'll just last one. But they basically, he was telling me how, in order to maintain order in Ancapistan, we should have military marches through the streets. Oh man. And this guy was like trying to run like a libertarian thing here in the US, but I don't know whatever happened to that, but it was quite the hilarious thing, quite the hilarious feat. But between all those things, I just put common ground movement and all that, with the exception of the Ron Paul Revolution, which I didn't really have a hand in. I was just a shit poster online. You know, the Mises Caucus is kind of the most, like, I take more pride in that one than any other group. And get more into that after a word from our sponsors.
Hey everyone, let me take a minute out of your time to tell you about a company I love, and that is Drip Cannabinoids. Drip sells a wide range of Delta 8 and Delta 10 products, and they are completely from seed to sale. The only third parties coming in are the ones that are testing their products to make sure that they are completely pure, and you will see that on their website. Drip has a wide range of products from vapes, tinctures, gummies, soft gels, and other things, and more to be coming here in the future, so that'll be really cool to see. Drip has been great enough to give every listener of this show 10% off their products. So go to dripcannabinoids.com and use code word Mitch, M-I-T-C-H, at checkout for 10% off. What's nice is that deal does not end. You love the product, want to go back and buy more? We'll use that code word again, and you'll get that 10% off again. So thank you, Drip, for helping sponsor this show. Anyway, let's get back to our program.
Yeah, so when it comes to the Mises Caucus, it really is crazy because there's almost like this feeling that Michael Heiss saw the potential that I didn't really get from these other places that I'd went and worked with, and kind of just gave me and some other folks, Celicia, Rob, and these other people, the room to create what we could here in Florida. And it's been a journey. Like we've basically taken something which didn't quite. It wasn't a big factor. It kind of existed. I want to say the Mises Caucus was like 3 people when we got the keys, and it really was no easy feat because we had nothing. We basically had to create a lot of it from scratch, and there was some stuff that we were able to get from prior people, but some of them, like I know the one guy I think is now Anthony Sabatini's protege or some shit like that. Didn't exactly stick around to see how we would transform things. But we managed to get a lot of people in, a lot of people excited. And, we saw this little group of just a few people. Eventually it would become, 7 people. And the next thing you know, we have so many people in our Discord that we have to move to Zoom to do our meetings because we can't do it because the Discords only allow so much and then too many technical issues arrive and blah, 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 blah. But, it really was something incredible to watch. And it's not like the situation here in Florida, there still is perfect. There's still a lot of work to be done. But to see us go from almost a non-entity to something that matters on the state scene, it really is something incredible to see happen. And there really is something powerful and magical about seeing that. And it's cool. And to get to know and build these, relationships with, coalitions with these different groups as well, that's been an interesting thing. That's really been happening as well. I feel like we've been very coalition strong, at least with the caucus here in this state. But I think that we got to kind of branch out to other things like candidates and whatnot. But one thing at a time. The future is just beginning here. But, as far as the Mises Caucus goes, I look at this caucus, and it's not even just our state. Like, I look at Michigan, I look at California, I look at even these states where, we've interviewed people on swamp creatures like Delaware and whatnot. And or Connecticut, whatever, fucking Pennsylvania. It really is something incredible to see happen because in a way I feel like I'm seeing the resurgence of the Ron Paul revolution, the remnant, so to speak. As many folks have put it. And that sort of remnant that we're seeing coming into the Libertarian Party. Here's the thing that I keep on pointing out. The people who don't like the Mises Caucus, they don't have the money, the power, or the wits to stop the Mises Caucus from coming in and taking over the party. They don't have any of that stuff. They can only rely on dirty tricks. They don't have the support. They don't have the numbers. Like, there's a reason that they were able to fuck us over so good when Ron ran. The reason they were able to fuck over the Ron Paul supporters is because the GOP has so much money. They have so much power. They have every play in a book. They have, if it was a card game, they would have a hand of cards larger than any of the Ron Paul people had. But the kind of people who don't like the Mises Caucus, who make a big fuss about not wanting Ron Paul libertarians in the Libertarian Party, they don't have a lot of that stuff still at their disposal. They have nothing but cheap, underhanded tactics, trying to expel people, trying to straight up take the party via coup, as we saw in New Hampshire, which was still a bizarre thing to think back on. But they got nothing, so that's why come convention, it seems like they're preparing to try and dispute certain state things. But this is all they got. They don't have anything else to stop us. They've tried using the mainstream media tactics of calling us fascists and whatnot, but it just doesn't work because we're not that. I make the joke about being the Polish Jew, but there's actually something to that, dude. I had family in the Holocaust. Like we aren't exactly fascists or Nazis. I'm not like Rich. I don't get as passionate about that sort of stuff, but he really doesn't like it when people say that sort of stuff about him and the Mises Caucus folks. But it's trying to label people what they're not. The thing is, it's a game that many critical thinkers tend to be libertarians right now. There isn't many who think purely on emotion, and they're trying to play emotional cards, and they just don't work. It's just something that doesn't tend to work with what, like the type of people who are in the liberty sphere right now. If they were using these tactics that they're using against us in when trying to deal with Democrats or people who watch CNN, maybe they would work. Those kind of people don't really go beyond critical thinking other than, oh, Don Lemon said that this guy is a Nazi or some shit, But, in my case, for example, when I kind of came into the Mises Caucus, I saw what these people were like. I'm like, these guys aren't alt-right or right-wing or whatever at all. Most of them want open borders. Like, it was kind of amazing to see, like, these are your far right-wingers that you're warning me about? They seem pretty Ron Paul-like to me. Like, these guys don't exactly scream, build the wall. Like, probably the closest thing that I heard from someone as far as build the wall goes in the Mises Caucus, it didn't even come from a guy who was saying build the wall. He was just like, well, I mean, if it's a political compromise, I suppose I'd be okay with like putting up a fence, but not having like crazy border protection. Like, it was kind of his way of like talking about a compromise theoretically, if such a compromise were to come with the opposing faction, rather than was like embracing that sort of thing. But trying these sort of like lazy smears, things like that, it's all they really got. They don't really have nothing. They got nothing else. I can't think of any other, unless they have like some great reset button of the LP sitting somewhere that I'm not aware of. I don't know. But either way, in Reno, we're having our own reset, the Great Reno Reset, and it's going to be great. Oh man, it'll be interesting to see where the party ends up. Whether Dave Smith will be the nominee or Spike Cohen or whatever. Well, normally I end up doing these shows for about an hour, but kind of nearing the 30-minute mark here. And well, frankly, I went through this topic a lot faster than I thought I would. Not really much to say, I guess. I could get into the nitty-gritty about the working for the communist. But there's nothing really to say about that other than that same communist eventually went to go work for anti-media and got fired by the anti-media. So I thought it was fucking hilarious. But yeah, that's all I can really say about all that. But I think there's a bright future with this caucus. I've been noticing a lot of people getting discouraged. And I don't know, I feel like this is where the white pill is at. You're not going to get a white pill on the Republicans or the Democrats. Go try and take over the Republicans like Tho Bishop and all those people want you to do. You're not going to get anything out of it. They're just going to screw you over and maybe toss you a bone when they're done feeding on all the flesh. That's all you're going to get from the GOP establishment. They're not going to give libertarians anything. I keep on hearing people say we need to get at the table or whatever. It's like, yeah, they're not giving us anything. They're putting us at the kids' table and barely giving us anything. So, no, take back the Libertarian Party. Make it something we're proud of. Make it something that is a cultural, something that can shift the cultural zeitgeist. The Democratic Party is crumbling. Just go watch Tim Pool. Like, he's been doing a good job documenting how this party has been absolutely crumbling. And if they go the way of the Whigs, someone has to take their place. Maybe it could be a party that actually cherishes ideas like individual liberty and free markets, like what liberals used to, cherish. Anyways, we are the soldiers here who have to really change the culture, and that's the point of this show, and that's the point of this whole movement. So, with that, then, I'm Mitch Connor. This has been a short episode. Next week, I will have Top Lobster on the program, my good buddy, where we're going to talk about art and all sorts of crazy shit. Just this week's episode was a dud in regards to culture. Didn't really talk much about culture at all. Next week is going to be nothing but culture, talking to my art buddy in the Liberty world. So with that, go check out the Libertarian Frontier on TeePublic. And go get yourself some Liberty merch. I have more coming on the way, more Michael Malice and Dave Smith stuff, because those seem to be becoming more popular. So might as well. And go follow me on Twitter at MitchConnorJLo. You'll see it right there. And with that, that has been your State of the Culture.